Hello and welcome to the first ever edition of the Out of Bounds podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. I am Nate Sharman, and joining me to my left is four-time Silver Creek Golf Course Club champion and VP of content here at FingerLakes1.com, Mr. Josh Durso. Josh, pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, we got it. We finally made it happen. Took like 6 months for this podcast to come from like idea to us physically sitting here talking about it, but we did it.
Yeah, and I like to think even before I started out here at 6 months ago that's something we've talked about even. You know, both of us just love talking about golf and love the golf landscape of things, so might as well get right into it. We're going to be talking a lot about professional golf and some local stuff too as well, so it's a pretty timely podcast in terms of we just saw one of my favorite majors to date, the Open Championship, Cameron Smith coming out victorious in that. What a fun tournament to watch.
It was crazy. It was one of the few, it feels like, over the last 2 years that really genuinely came down to the final 4 or 5 holes. Rory McIlroy, despite, we're going to talk a little bit more about his play and what he's taking away from it later, but like even what he was going throughout his round and how his round progressed, he still was in it on 16 and 17, and then on 18. And it was awesome because it wasn't just 2 players, even though I think it set up like it was going to be a 2-player race between Viktor Hovland and Cam Smith, obviously, but it was a really, really good event, good for golf.
Right, and of course it's the old course of St. Andrews. I mean, where can you get more historic golf in terms of that golf course and what it means to the whole golf landscape? And we'll get a little bit more of that and on kind of how our opinions of that golf course are, whether you're a Lynx golf fan or not. But going back to Rory McIlroy, he put on a ball striking display. I mean, you can't hit the golf ball any better than he did. He hit every single green. According to Justin Ray on Twitter, he's the only golfer that he can remember in recent memory to hold the 54-hole lead, hit every single green in regulation on Sunday, and lose the golf tournament. It's St. Andrews, so the greens are like 100 feet wide, but which plays a little bit of part into it, but still, he knocked it on every single green regulation.
Yeah, I mean, he played short of, as you and I have talked a little bit about, Cam Smith going nuclear 2 different times during a 4-round golf event. He played the most consistent golf, even on Sunday when his play, I think, was maybe criticized a little bit for being too conservative. Yeah. He still played the most consistent golf over the 4 days of anybody. Maybe you can make the argument for Cam Smith, but it was, I kind of was thinking before we came on here, what was it for Rory on Sunday that would, he lost, but what was it that made him the loser that day? It seemed like it was like 50% bad game plan, playing too conservatively, 25% just bad breaks. If a putt or 2 falls on the front 9, he probably has a completely different energy coming down the stretch. And then 25% maybe unrealistic expectations with just kind of everything that had been surrounding him and surrounding golf, coming into it with the LIV conversation and how out front Rory has been opposing LIV. So just kind of the world's expectations that Rory was going to win it.
Right.
But, it's so much of it for him. And I think one reason why he can still be, he could still win a bunch of tournaments coming down the stretch now in the remainder of the season is because his game is arguably like top 3 in the world right now. I don't really think. I mean, agree. Like he overall, he hasn't done anything wrong. Like he's just played incredible golf, and he played incredible golf under really interesting circumstances.
Right. And it's just Cameron Smith is unbelievable. He shoots 30 coming in on the back 9, goes and wins the golf tournament. Makes 5 birdies in a row, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I thought he was going to keep making them, to be honest. It was really, really fun to watch, and especially with the being played at an earlier time due to the time change. I kind of like watching it finish up around 2 o'clock. That's kind of nice for me. I'm an old guy at heart, so I wake up early, so I do like the British Open in that aspect. But it's just fun, it was just so much fun to watch him just finish like that, because it's incredible.
Yeah, and I think the interesting, with all the storylines that we had coming in, probably the most fascinating takeaway that we have for Cam Smith beyond the LIV Golf discussion, which we will be getting into that in a few minutes here, he put on basically as authoritative a performance especially Saturday or Friday and Sunday, if we're going to take those 2 rounds when he really went off, as we saw Scottie Scheffler in the first half of the year.
Right.
So it really, his stock really rose, I think, to basically equal footing. What he does next is a different debate, but obviously those were the two or three people that everyone was talking about on Sunday. One person that no one was talking about on the weekend, at least in terms of playing golf, was Tiger Woods.
Right.
Who just he didn't even look like a guy who should have been there.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's unfortunate though. He's on number one, not a very long hole, so he takes less than driver, hits it right down the center of the fairway, and it ends up in a divot. Right. That's just a brutal start. I mean, I know there's no such thing as excuses, but he takes the second shot, he's thinking about the divot, and he chunks it and it lands in the water, and he makes it an opening double. The first hole, that's never really a good start, and that's something Tiger's done before, and he's been able to overcome it, but this is a little bit different of a Tiger, but it's just so much fun to watch him out there. I think Max Homa did a really good job describing it. He got the pleasure to play with him this week. Just watching him come over that 18th bridge on Friday. He's way out of it. It doesn't matter, but it's just Tiger Woods. It's historic, the old course, and most likely the last time we'll ever see him there.
I disagree. I don't
think he'll play there in what's it 6 years, and they'll play there again. I would be surprised if he played there again.
I think he's going to play, and here's when I think about what this past weekend was for Tiger Woods, it was as much ceremonial as it was about him trying to go out and compete and win. I think anybody who had watched him play the 2 times that we'd seen him play prior to this, excluding last December in the majors, you had to know he wasn't going to compete or win. It just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So to say that he can't have another ceremonial participation run through again in 6 years or 5 years, or maybe I've seen some chatter about potentially trying to get St. Andrews moved up in the rotation to possibly have it be hosted in 4 years or 5 years. I think it's possible. It's not like he's going to be 60 years old, and he's not going to be playing in other events. I mean, he made it pretty clear that he struggles to get around 18 holes, so we're not going to see him participating in, these random tour stops.
I just don't see why he would play again, because knowing Tiger, he's only going to play in a golf tournament if he can win. So in 6 years, see where his health is, but if he can't compete now, what makes you think he can compete in 6 years?
So, but is his role in the game different in 6 years? And that's where I think things start to shift a little bit, especially if we do see, I don't think it's going to happen, but if LIV does grow and turn into this competing tour, Tiger has been really upfront about how he feels about LIV and how he feels about the tour and why players should be staying in the tour. I think his role in the tour could very well be evolving over the next 2, 3, 4 years, and definitely in 5 or 6 years or 7 years, whenever it winds up back, he's obviously going to be well beyond, like you said, that window of him potentially winning an Open, but at the same time, still not like a Nicklaus stage or a Palmer stage where they're in their 60s or 70s and strictly there for just sort of one-day ceremony and out and about.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think Tiger's got that professional in him that he only wants to be there if he's going to try to win the golf tournament. But like you said, that could change. I think that's a good segue to get into LIV, because I've been infatuated with the LIV Tour in the last few months. I mean, it's by far been the most important topic in the landscape of golf in the last few months. So if you're new to this, LIV is a newly formed professional golf league backed by the Saudi Arabian Foundation. They have 8 events this year, and if you join the LIV Tour, if you leave the PGA Tour and join this new tour, they will, in fact, ban you from all PGA Tour players. Jay Monahan, the PGA Tour commissioner, has been very steadfast on that. You're not allowed to play in any PGA Tour events. For now, you're able to play in the majors. That could change. There's been chatter kind of up and down if that's going to change. But for now, you can play in those 4 tournaments. And the meaning behind it is that Saudis just have more money than they know what to do with. And they're willing to spend it and willing to get big guys to come over and play in their tournaments and play in their events and really do it. I think they can succeed by just throwing money at the problem. It's going to be interesting to see if they'll be able to do that. But
a little bit of sports washing going on.
Yes,
sure.
definitely.
It's interesting because one of the questions we were kind of tossing back and forth was, did the LIV stock increase or decrease?
That's a great
the
question.
Weekend, and to me, it felt like it just remained flat. Like there wasn't any big change, right? Like major championship golf is in a category of its own, especially when it comes to people watching.
Right.
Like your casual fans,
The average
watching.
viewer, yep.
LIV can't, nor will it ever be able to compete with that. The same can be said for the PGA Tour and these events week in and week out, the John Deere and things like that. You have some exceptions, I think, like the Players Championship, which is kind of viewed as like the fifth major, obviously. But at the same time, I don't think this past weekend did anything, like there were lots of complaints about pace of play the first 2 days at the Open.
Yep.
LIV shotguns. And does that mean, for those who might not know, shotgun, you just start on every hole. Would that fix the problem? Would that fix the pace of play problem that the PGA Tour is developing right now or has developed over the last few years? No. So, I didn't see anything this past weekend that made me think, oh, wow, yeah, LIV Tour is a much more valuable product now than it was on Wednesday last week.
I think the pace of play issue at St. Andrews is an old course issue.
Oh, yeah.
You have a golf course that has at least 3 shared greens on it, 3 or 4 at least drivable par 4s. So they're oftentimes waiting for the green to clear or waving guys up, and it just doesn't. It's not a perfect process, especially there. I don't think there's pace of play issue on the PGA Tour. You hear guys talking about it, but I don't really think it's an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it can get a little slow, but it's still not egregious. You had some long rounds at St. Andrews, but that's primarily an old course issue with shared greens and short par 4s and all that things.
Yeah, St. Andrews feels like a maze without walls in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but it's
got
pretty
players
cool, though.
bobbing and weaving all over the place. Yeah, and I agree. It is a cool thing, and I think one of the conversation pieces that we were kind of throwing back and forth yesterday was just St. Andrews' place in modern golf. And minus the LIV conversation, I think there is a conversation to be had about where the Open Championship sits in relation to the other 3 majors and how challenging it is and what scoring looks like, because European golf in general, I don't think is conducive to low scoring as much as it used to be, weather permitting.
Weather permitting, yes.
So
I think there's too many variables in links golf.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it a couple times where you think a guy's drive is going to bounce like the other drives and land on the green, but it just doesn't bounce.
Right.
In some spots, if it hits the wrong spot or an upslope or downslope, vice versa. Or you can hit the ball down the middle of the fairway and you're in a bunker that's 30 feet deep.
Right.
So it's just like there's just a lot of variables to me. I understand that's the work golf has been created, and I don't think in any way, shape, or form we should go away from it. But I think it's a valid talking point to talk about how it's way different than the American game, or American courses rather.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting, but I think it's really cool to watch, but there's just so many variables.
And I think it has its place. And I think if the tour were more global, this would be a problem would have been fixed in the past. But the PGA Tour and obviously a DP World Tour, European, there never really has been a strong, cohesive effort across the board. One of the questions that keeps popping up over and over again is, what does the PGA Tour need to learn from LIV? And obviously, we've seen a couple of LIV events now, and I'm curious if there's anything that stands out to you, whether it be from just the interacting of players and media and fans, or whether it be like actual structure of tournaments, that the PGA Tour could pick up and maybe use to benefit its product and consumers.
So what I think is the coolest part and the most fun part to watch about LIV is something that is hard to change for the PGA Tour. Since the LIV Tour is streamed on YouTube and it doesn't have a major broadcasting partner, they don't have to have commercials or anything like that. Right. So they can just show constant golf shots. And the fact that they have shotgun too, they have someone on every hole hitting a ball at every single moment. You run into some problems, especially towards the end of tournaments, where you're watching someone talk in the cabin about something and you're like, okay, I want to see someone hit a golf ball.
Right.
So that's something they could learn, but I realize that there is really tremendous kind of problems that come with that. You have things you need to oblige to with with TV partners and stuff like that.
Yep.
So that's going to be something challenging. But I think they can definitely learn and kind of grow through that and show that people do want to see that. They want to see people hitting.
Yeah, and I think it will probably push the PGA Tour to be a little more creative.
Yes, for sure.
In how they execute the TV side or the production side of tournaments. Now, it's always going to be a lot easier for LIV to do whatever the hell they want to because
unlimited money.
Yeah, they have no business.
And they don't want to make money. They don't really care.
Right. So it's, how do the PGA Tour probably shouldn't pay too much attention or focus too much on trying to compete with it or try to be exactly like it. But
I don't think they can compete because of the money factor.
Figure out ways to tighten it up a little bit, maybe. But it's interesting because there again, that leads perfectly into this whole conversation about people who think LIV is going to at some point here outshine the PGA Tour and what the product that it puts out on a week in and week out basis. And to me, and chime in here, I just don't see it because there's a finite amount of audience and energy and willingness to consume a professional sport like that.
Yeah.
And when you introduce a new product, I know everybody's been saying, grow the game, grow the game, grow the game. This is going to grow the game. Just because you add another option doesn't mean you're going to add another round of potential viewers. You're most likely just pulling from your existing viewer pool. So I don't see it happening. People have too many options when it comes to sports and entertainment. I think about some of the things that have done a good job of growing the game, and I think of a lot of the stuff we've seen on social media, basically, that's actually grown the game for the common person, for the common amateur golfer. There's not a lot that I think I texted you after Sunday, and I said, there isn't much that's relatable to the average golfer watching Rory McIlroy just absolutely pummel a drive, being 5'7" or 5'8" and built like an absolute tank.
Right.
There's nothing relatable about that to the average golfer who's just playing on Saturday or Sunday with their friends. And that's kind of the dynamic. These tours, whether it's the DP or whether it's the PGA or LIV, they've all got to fight the attention span problem that we have right now. And there's just too many options and not enough time, it seems, because people's the amount of time that people are spending consuming these different products is getting lesser and lesser, not more and more.
Right. I think there would be two major problems that the PGA Tour could face with the LIV Tour. Right now, not too many problems, but I think if they're able to find a major broadcasting network that will show them, I think that could be a huge detriment.
Yeah.
Because I think right now, you take a look at your audience in terms of golf, it's sometimes an older crowd that has cable, so they're not going to go on YouTube and watch the LIV Tour. They're just not. They're going to go to Channel 3 and watch the final round of the Genesis Open. Yep. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to watch that. So that's the first problem, I think, is that if they were able to get a network like Fox or a network, anything like that, to broadcast them on cable television, I think that'd be a huge problem. And the other one we're kind of starting to see now, if you get a young guy with potential to win a lot, i.e. Cameron Smith, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, a lot of those guys have disarmed the rumors, but if you're able to get some of those guys that are still winning and still playing at a high level in their prime to come to the LIV Tour, then you got a real problem, because I think a lot of guys think about, I want to play against the best golfers in the world. Mm-hmm. And if the best golfers, one best golfer goes in the world, like i.e. Cameron Smith, goes to the LIV Tour, you could see a domino effect.
Right.
It's just going to take one guy to want the money. And think about that and to get more guys to go, and it could happen, but we're seeing with Cameron Smith that it's very much so a possibility that he goes to LIV.
So to that end, you mentioned that, and it immediately made me think the opposite. So let's go to the opposite side of the table. If the PGA Tour started streaming effectively tomorrow, the way LIV is streaming now, it would almost turn the tables, I think, because that is a short term, the situation you described with a major broadcast partner partnering with LIV and all the baggage that comes along with that is a short term problem, because people who are under the age of 40, people who are under the age of 30, and certainly people who are under the age of 20 are not going to be mainstream NBC, CBS, ABC consumers
That's true, yes.
10, 15 years from now. So right now, realistically, the PGA Tour should be figuring out how it can stream the best product possible, because right now that's not where the audience by and large is.
I think the LIV Tour will always do a better job at that because they don't have to worry about commercials. They can just continue to throw unlimited money at the problem. PGA Tour is always going to have to find a way to make money off of it. The LIV Tour is not going to matter as much.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the big question marks with the PGA Tour is what is the real cost for them to produce that TV level production? Because we know they're capturing the content, right? Like we know we see it on Twitter and we see it on Instagram. Like every swing is captured, whether it's televised or not, on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, but it's not being streamed anywhere. Why? And it's being held or it's being pushed off, and the people who are like watching are only seeing featured groups,
right,
streaming, or, it's this question of like, what's the why? Can the tour identify the why and fix for that problem so that they can just stream a complete product all the time from 8 or 8:15 or 8:30, whenever that first group goes out Thursday morning, until the final putt is tapped in Sunday afternoon? To me, that seems like the one obvious place where the PGA Tour can learn and grow and get better and kind of put LIV in its place. Because LIV is never going, I don't think LIV is ever going to, especially with having already committed to this shorter schedule, like just by sheer volume, PGA Tour is going to be able to like out-compete week in and week out with viewers. Viewers go where there's a product most readily available.
Right.
If LIV is only going to have, 13, 14 events a year, leaves a lot of downtime throughout the year for people to be consuming another product. So it feels to me like the streaming aspect of it is where the PGA Tour should be focusing its energy at this point. The Cam Smith debate is so interesting. I think it would be painful, like you said, that would be a big loss. But at the same time, I wonder if he has enough brand or clout with I'll say the very casual PGA Tour or golf fan to have the kind of impact that to you or I, Cam Smith leaving would have. Because he's not a Bryce DeChambeau. He's not a Brooks Koepka. He is not a Phil Mickelson. He's not, yes, he is literally one of the two best golfers on the planet right now.
Yep.
And I don't think there's any debating that.
Right.
But 95% of people who've watched golf in the last 2 months probably don't even know who he is or what his significance is in golf.
I don't know. I think because he's an Australian with a mullet, I think people know who he is. I think that does a really good job branding him. You know, if you see a picture of him, that's Cameron Smith. I would like to think that your casual golf fan, I mean, now they definitely do with winning the British Open, but he's done a fantastic job branding with that. With, everyone loves an Australian, right? No one's going to not like an Australian with a mullet like that and makes every single putt he looks at. Yeah. How can you hate him?
Well, and plus, like, when I listen to him interact with the media, he feels a lot like DJ. He feels a lot like Dustin Johnson.
I would agree.
And I almost wonder if, like, we live in the age of internet personalities. I think more people know who Max Homa is than know who Cam Smith is.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And that is like in terms of golf, that kind of paints the issue here that I see that with this is like, so if Cam Smith goes to LIV, I don't think it's as big a deal if, for example, like Max went to LIV. I think there's that kind of dynamic. It would be different if you saw a mass exodus of, 10 of the top 20 players in the world.
That's what could happen, though, if Cameron Smith goes, I think.
It doesn't, well, I guess it would be interesting to see, but given the makeup of the top 20 and how out front most of them have been, even though some people read into McIlroy having a slightly different tone.
Yeah, he twisted his whole words.
Last couple weeks about LIV. I think that also could just be him getting comfortable with the fact that LIV is going to be around and nothing he can say is going to like change the fact that LIV is going to be around. But I just don't see it happening. And at the end of the day, it just kind of waters down the pool that LIV has in the long term. Because remember, right now all these players are ranked in the top 100, but they're going to have to find a way to stay ranked in the top 100. I think I was just looking at a chart a little while ago where at the end of the year, DJ I think is going to be the highest ranked player at like 46 or 42, one of the two. And it's just it's just going to be a progressive slide from there. Right. Eligibility and majors kind of come into question at that point too. A lot of good golfers. A lot of good golfers out there.
Yeah, I mean, you only have, 4 to 5 guys that are going to be exempt from the Masters for their whole life. DJ, Sergio, Pat Reed, et cetera, Phil. So it's going to be interesting. Cam Smith just bought himself, I think it's 5 years when you win. So you have a bunch of guys like Bryson in that kind of group 2 that are going to be able to play, and that's the only way they're going to get overall world golf ranking points.
Right.
You can't earn overall, as of now anyway, you can't earn those points in the LIV Tour. You have to play a 72-hole golf tournament, and I believe you have to play them in a row too, in sequential order. So that's something that could change, though. If the LIV Tour gets big, they could change that rule.
How do you weight that equally? The question to me becomes at that stage, how do you weight it equally when you have drastically different rules in both tours? Like, there isn't that much of a difference from a rules perspective in the DP World Tour, or even before when it was just the Euro Tour compared to the PGA Tour. Like, golf was golf. Like, these are fundamentally different events in LIV. Like, 54 holes, you got drastically different rules, playing under drastically different circumstances, no cuts, money incentive totally different. Like, all of these factors make it really hard, I think, to try and, determine what is a 10th place finish worth here versus a 10th place finish there, and what do you do? Like, how do you even
I think that's what they're going through now is one of the reasons why they don't. But I could see a scenario where they do, and they let them get ranking points from the tournament.
Yeah.
They might kind of have to. If Cameron Smith goes and a couple other guys go, they might have no other choice because they're going to need to let the guys in the majors. That's going to be something that's going to need, if they're going to allow them to play, they're going to need to be able to play because the average golf fan needs to see those kind of guys on Sunday at Augusta, on Sunday at St. Andrews.
Yeah, and somebody else, and it's interesting. We were kind of talking over the gets that the LIV has picked up over the last 2 weeks. David Faraday.
That's huge.
Where's that fall? Where's that fall for you?
That's up there. David Faraday has done a very good job building a brand. Faraday's show is an awesome show. He doesn't make much anymore, but even when you're watching, even the average golf fan, they start talking, and David Faraday starts talking, you know who he is.
Yeah.
He has a distinct accent, a distinct way of words, too. He's very funny. He's very dry. He's very, kind of, dry is the right word, but very, kind of deadpans everything, and quite frankly, very funny. So I think that's a pretty big get. That, to me, I don't know if you agree with this yourself, Josh, but that's up there with the Dustin Johnson acquisition, with the Phil acquisition, with a possible Cameron Smith. That rivals those picks. Yeah,
I would agree, and I would say it's probably. I even would take it a step further and say it's the biggest, because I can think back to my childhood. Like, obviously, me growing up in golf and being a fan of golf is a lot different than I think the average person. But I can remember playing like Tiger Woods video games with Gary McCord and David Faraday being the announcers on the game. And he has been around for decades and just been the most steady voice, or one of the most steady voices in golf broadcast.
Yes.
And it's gone. Right. Now, reading some of the reaction to that was interesting, because I think there was, which wasn't really reported when it was happening, but between 2015 and present day, there were a lot of kind of missteps in terms of where he was and how the networks that he was working with, CBS before, NBC, now, how they kind of floundered the opportunity to use him correctly, which that happens. Big companies, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But I still think he's a guy that's at the top of his game, right? Like, he's still a guy who's considered to be a big voice in golf, and that's huge.
And he has a brand. I think that's the biggest part of him.
Oh, yeah.
It's David Faraday. It's that great accent, like I was saying. You always know who he is, what he's talking about, the way he uses his words. It's a big get. I mean, you take a look at the other big gets for the LIV. Dustin, like I said, Phil, Bryson, Patrick Reed, Stenson, who is the Ryder Cup captain for Europe, yep. which is huge news, I think, out of late last week, with Henrik Stenson going to join the LIV Tour. Now the Ryder Cup has to scramble to find somebody else to captain it, or do they make a misstep and allow Stenson to still be the captain? That's going to be really fun to really watch, because if these Euro guys, i.e. Poulter, Answer, Perez, or not Perez, and Garcia they're going to the LIV Tour and they're not going to be able to play in the Ryder Cup, isn't the U.S. just going to walk all over them with your Morikawa, with Scottie Scheffler, and all those different guys? If Cam Smith goes to the LIV Tour, they lose another guy, but
yeah, I mean,
it's President's Cup. But.
And that kind of debate is probably the Stenson grab feels more like LIV just trying to poke us.
That's the only reason they did it, is because he's the Ryder Cup captain.
I mean, nobody would want him otherwise, right? Like we can say that. Can we say that?
He missed the cut at the Open.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one of the Phil Mickelson-esque grabs, minus having the brand that came along with Phil before all of the drama that he threw himself into over the last 8 months.
Yeah, Phil will always be in America's heart, right? Lefty. He's always been so fun to watch and fun to be around. So I think that's a huge get, but Phil's on the back nine of his career, so it's not too bad.
Before we get into what's coming up this week with the 3M, one open question to me that I think is worth talking a little bit about before we go, the rooting factor of the announcers, the broadcast, and kind of all of sports media appearing to rally behind Rory, starting Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, and then that continuing all through the weekend and being really loud and really obvious come Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. Did it feel off? Did it feel like something that wasn't quite up to par for what the product needs to be?
Yeah, as a guy that does sports broadcasting, that's something you like to try to stay away from. But I think due to the factor of LIV and like we said, Rory McIlroy being kind of the poster child for the PGA Tour and being able to speak so freely and well with words, I think that's the biggest reason why the whole country, why the broadcast was quote-unquote rooting for him. I don't think that had anything to do with Rory not being able to come out with a victory,
right?
Which is a good thing. Rory didn't hear a single thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's something that I noticed, and I think I sent you a message. I was like, they're openly rooting for Rory McIlroy, and it's a little bit strange.
Felt weird. Felt really weird.
Yeah.
And I would say that it'll be something that gets forgotten really quickly.
Yes.
Right?
It's already forgotten, I think.
Nobody's going to remember how the announcers were really not doing a great job of staying unbiased coming down the stretch, especially on Sunday. But it doesn't look good. I don't think it paints a really great picture for the program itself, if we're going to call it that. It's tough because it makes it look, and it put more focus, I think, on the LIV side of things than it needed to at that point, because it just kept every time it was this, every time it seemed like Rory was coming up, they were also kind of mentioning or referencing the things he said about LIV. And it just felt like when you're in the moment, when you're in competition like that, if Rory or folks in the media want to talk about it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday before play starts, fine. But once play starts, let it go until it's over. And if that's what you want it to be, let it be then. Mm-hmm. But don't make it part of the show. It's not a good look.
What a story it would have been though if he won.
If he won, it would have been maybe the biggest. It would have possibly been the biggest story in golf, and it really would have shaken up the Player of the Year debate. Yes. Which is firing on all cylinders now. It's pretty much a two-man race, it seems. Yep. But had he won, or even if he gets hot and has a good run in August, which we'll be talking about in future episodes for sure, it really would have shaken things up.
If Cam Smith wants to just go join LIV, it's going to be a really easy decision. Though.
Oh my God, it's not even a decision at that point. It's one guy, Scottie Scheffler.
Yeah.
So yeah, aside from that, there was you want to get it. Let's get into the British Open and its place in majors. I mentioned it early on, but I want to talk about St. Andrews. Should that be in the rotation at this point?
Yes, I think so.
Because that was a legitimate question that kept popping up on Twitter, especially over the weekend when these guys were just absolutely tearing it up.
I think there's just too much history there to go away from it.
Yeah. Just
I don't know
accept.
yeah, because there's no way you can make it longer. That's the only thing that's kind of unfortunate. It is really fun to watch guys drive par fours.
Yeah.
It just, the shared greens thing to me is a little bit weird,
Yeah.
but that's kind of how golf was created in golf and was rooted in, and we shouldn't ignore that, in my opinion.
Agreed. And I think I came full circle on that because I was in the beginning of the week. I think I texted you about 30 times complaining about various aspects of St.
I think
Andrews.
I did too, yeah.
And it just played so short. But by the end of the weekend, you just accept the fact that it's a short course, that the modern professional golfer is going to rip to shreds if there is no wind or rain or weather elements. And that's just it. We just accept it for what it is.
The wind gets up to 30 miles an hour.
Well, the course becomes unplayable.
It's
too,
unplayable
which is
because the
kind
ball
of
doesn't
wild.
stay on the green.
Right. And that's crazy too, because then you start to think like you have this really small window of what like playable conditions are at St. Andrews, which is a whole separate like conversation and debate.
Right.
We've got more golf coming up this week. 3M. What do we got going on there?
TPC Twin Cities in Blaine, Minnesota. Take a look at our past champions. 2021, Cameron Champ. Haven't heard that name in a while. Interesting, isn't it?
Feels like it's
Michael
been
Thompson in 2020. 2019, Matt Wolf. This is what Jordan Spieth would call a wedge contest. You get right around that 20 under number is going to be what you need for it to win. And I like watching those. Well, I like watching guys hit it in tight and knocking in putts. It's fun. I really do like watching it.
Yeah, and I think after kind of what would normally be an open weekend where scoring under normal circumstances is a lot lower, it's a nice kind of like exciting rebound, especially when you've got a field. I was looking at strength of field, and it's not a very strong or impressive field.
So the LIV and the Open.
Yeah, so it's not, Chez Reavie enters off his win last week at the Barracuda. I saw he's like in one of the top 10 odds favorites. Thigala, obviously, playing. That would be him getting a win now would probably be the best timed thing we've seen in golf, because he's been so close, and it seemed like he had some energy coming into the Open, and then just kind of hung around for a couple days. Didn't have a bad showing, but like it seems like his game is where it needs to be to get a win.
For sure.
So it'd be a week to get it, but like, Tony Finau, Adam Hadwin, Cam Davis, they're kind of the only like household names really that are playing.
Hideki Matsuyama.
Matsuyama is playing as well.
Who was rumored to go to the LIV Tour.
Like he's just gonna.
They did that. He's been rumored for like 2 weeks, and now he's just gonna come back to the States to play in a PGA Tour event. I don't really know what's going on there. I'd like to see an update from Hideki's camp, but he's in the field.
He's in the field and maybe playing and maybe winning.
Maybe winning.
You have a pick?
Ooh.
You have a pick? Like just a winner pick. Who's going to win it? I think Thigala is going to go win it.
I like that. I think Tringali will compete. You see that guy compete a lot. I would love to see him win. I do like his game. He's always right there. You could just never kind of figure that out on Sundays. So give me Cam Tringali. Why not?
All right. I like that. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. So a couple things that we're going to have coming up in the next few episodes here. Golf bag giveaway. Oh. Like free stuff? Who doesn't like free stuff? We're going to give away a Callaway golf bag. And also we're going to be starting up we'll call it local regional segment, where we touch on some of the things in local golf that we're seeing, or regional golf that we're seeing in upstate New York, which I think is going to be pretty cool, because it's going to give us an opportunity to kind of shine a light on the non-elite side of golf, the side of golf that is the everyman, right. The person who's going out and playing in league on a Wednesday afternoon, or the person who's going out with their buddies Saturday or Sunday morning and just playing around just to play around. Not too worried about score, maybe not breaking 100, maybe not breaking 120.
Yeah, but that doesn't even matter.
But that doesn't even matter, right? So like the everyday golf, and I think that's going to be pretty awesome. But that's what we got.
And there's so many fun golf courses in this area, in Rochester. You take a look at all the different public golf courses. I won't even start naming some for fear of leaving some out, because it's just a hotbed, I think.
Dozens.
You have a place that Rochester was 40, 50 years ago, a lot of private golf clubs. You have Blue Heron in Macedon, where Jack Nicklaus came and played it and raved about it. Now that's completely public.
Yeah.
So it's unreal how many good golf courses and fun tracks there are to play around this area, and in Rochester too as well.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to the first episode of Out of Bounds Podcast. We'll be here every week, Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. here on the FingerLakes1.com YouTube channel. Shout out to Paul Russo for helping us out here today. hopefully we'll hear from him in the next few episodes coming up. So, yep, be sure to listen here on YouTube. Go back and listen to on Spotify, Anchor as well. And make sure you like, share, subscribe here on YouTube. So, for Josh Durso, my name's Nate Sharman. Thanks for listening to the first ever episode of the Out of Bounds podcast. Have a great day.